I'm Zonile Ngubeni and you're watching Joburg Today.
The city of Joburg, and in particular Mayor Geoffrey Makhubo, have their work cut out for them in 2021. The question is he up for the challenge, and what will he change? Well, he's been keeping a very low profile to date, and to answer, we turn to Mli Ndamase, the mayoral spokesperson. I'm Peter Ndoro, and this is For the Record. What is the mayor up to that is keeping him so busy that he's got this low profile at the moment?
Well, I suppose we must appreciate Joburg in its nature. We are a city of 5.5 million residents. Unlike many other cities, we are a city which is run through entities. So we've got about 13 entities in the city, which are managing various critical infrastructure and service delivery components, which include your waste management, your roads, your water, and so on. And you've also got a mayor who's got a very deep understanding of the city and who's got a very high vision of what the city should be able to achieve. And one of the things the mayor always says is that, you know, it's well and good to run good and effective PR, but importantly is that you must speak to tangible things. When you say certain things must happen, they must happen. When you promise people certain deliverables, they must be delivered. And ultimately, the impact must be the priority of the city. And that is why the mayor gives himself time to actually invest in ensuring that we drive the city, we build the capacity, and we really do the work that is necessary to bring the city back on a course that will live up to what we call a world-class African city.
All right. Are you saying that he's got nothing to report at the moment in terms of gains?
Well, there's a number of gains that I think we're making as the city. And the expectation, unfortunately, even with the media space, is that when there has been a gain, it must be seen through the mayor. I was discussing earlier this morning that we've had the return of the pointsmen who have been assisting traffic in the city of Johannesburg just with the beginning of this week. And many residents have been responding positively. They've been sending messages and so on. And that is an announcement and a deliverable that is actually seen in the practicality and the exercise and the availability of the pointsmen at intersections, not through a PR statement or a media tour by the mayor. So that is the preference of the mayor, that let the residents of Johannesburg really feel the impact of the work that we are doing. Let them become testament to what it is that the city is delivering for them. And if the residents are really receiving the benefit, that should show them that there is an effective government in the city and it's working for their benefit.
All right. One gain for sure that you point out. Local government elections are on the horizon. A big city, big expectations. Service delivery continues to be, I guess, a contentious issue. People always want more and they want it much quicker. How is the mayor going to mitigate these expectations, especially with the local government elections on the horizon?
One of the first things we must appreciate, Peter, is that the city is quite in a disastrous state. We must appreciate that our roads are collapsing. We must appreciate and be honest that there's potholes that are littered all over the city. We must be honest to say that we know that our entity in City Power is having serious challenges with illegal connections, which are affecting the reliability of service to those people who are ratepayers and who actually pay for the service that they should be receiving. So these are challenges that exist in the city. Unfortunately, these are challenges that systematically you first need to get the right people in the right positions to be able to respond and understand the challenges so that we can deliver against them. You also need to make sure that in those entities that are responsible, there is a concerted effort and understanding of how we must be able to deliver for the expectations of the residents. One of the biggest criticisms that the mayor has is and which comes back to your question about media and PR, is that we had an administration that was very heavy on PR previously in the last 3 years in the city. But if you look at the actual impact of the work that was happening in the city, we are seeing the disaster and the destruction that the city has experienced over that particular period. And quite frankly, you know, these are some of these problems are man-made. If you look at irregular expenditure in the city, increased to an all-time of 2.4 billion by 2019. If you look at the appointments that were made in the city, the public protector issued a report recently, people not qualifying for jobs, the best candidates not being appointed. We are appointing candidates who are number 5 on a list of recommended people instead of being number 1. So those are some of the challenges that you have, because then it expresses itself in how the city is able to deliver. Because the people you have then employed in critical positions in the city were, 1, not your best and recommended candidates, but 2, were not necessarily suitable for the roles that they are in.
All right, so then what are you doing to stabilize things so that A, as a resident, I feel safe, and also B, that you're creating a conducive environment for business?
Well, for you as a resident, I think importantly, we are starting to see a turn in how the city is functioning. We are starting to see a return to normality. The mayor did launch a war on potholes to make sure that we're able to repair our roads. We have brought the JRA, which is the Johannesburg Road Agency, to terms to say we do need to ensure that we deliver on our new infrastructure, we rehabilitate our roads, we repair our bridges, and we are also able to take care of our stormwater drainage system. Recently, we also launched what is called the Joburg 10 Plus program, which is trying to assist us through the Johannesburg Metro Police, at least have a minimum of 10 Metro Police officers in every single ward of the city. Now, we've got 135 wards, and we're deploying Metro Police officers in each and every one of those wards so that we can increase police visibility, we can be able to curb the crime and enforce the bylaws within these particular wards, so that we can really make Johannesburg a safe and livable city for the residents of the city. But all of these, ultimately, the pace has to be set from the top, and which is why it has been important. The mayor has gone to each and every single region talking to Metro Police officers in the city. He has visited each and every licensing department throughout the city. He has visited each and every health region within the city. Again, trying to make sure that the employees of the city, the persons who are on the front line responsible for service delivery, understand that there is a new effort to make sure that we do the right things and we do them correctly. And that is the impact that the city is trying to put. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has been very disruptive to the economy of the city. It's been very disruptive to business in the city. And part and parcel of the strategy that had been put together in the city was that we must firstly have a response to COVID-19. We must go into a recovery process of how we are able to rebuild. And that the third phase must be a thrive on how do we thrive beyond this particular pandemic. And I think with the responses that the response effort that we saw earlier on, especially with the contact tracing, the mass testing, the more health response, it was quite a commendable response and effort. The recovery process, I think, is still underway to make sure that we're able to support small businesses within the city. And you know, some of the biggest challenges that were highlighted during COVID, for instance, was how we support the informal economy. Your hawkers who are around our taxi ranks in the city, how do we formalize them? Because one of the tendencies of government and state is that you tend to illegalize the poor. The poor start a business, you say they don't have a license. They start to sell tomatoes on the street, you say they don't have a permit to sell in that particular place. So you must really begin to create a system that supports that particular economy, so that when people wake up every morning to come to the city, so that they can be able to earn a living, they do so legally and with the support of their government.
All right, so one of the things as a journalist is I get to talk to both sides. Both administrations. The one before would point fingers at the ANC's administration. Just now, when we were speaking, you talked about the mess that you had to fix. In the end, people get a sense that it's us and them in council. And what's really needed is more cohesion to make sure that you get the best out of all the talent that's available. What's the mayor's strategy to get more cohesion at local council level?
One, you need to make sure that the residents identify with their city. The residents need to appreciate that it's a government that they elect. And you must remember that with the current mayor, he was sitting in opposition for the last 3 years. And there is no urge to be in power at all costs, because ultimately it's the residents that must validate the efforts that the government and the party that he represents is making in government. And you are quite correct. Sometimes it tends to be an us and them. But the point of the matter, and which is what our media should also be assisting us, is because some of these things, unfortunately, they are factual. Some of these things are documented. Now, when people make claims we must be able to interrogate whether or not these claims are actually correct and factual, and whether or not these claims can be backed up by evidence. Now, to say that there's an irregular expenditure in the city that has reached an all-time high of 2.4 billion, it's a verified fact by the Auditor General. Now, that is a concern all residents must have, because it tells us that either there is money that has been lost that should have been utilized for the benefit of the residents, or there are people who have benefited themselves as opposed to benefiting the residents of the city. You know, one of the most glaring things is how in the city we had a group of over 1,400 Johannesburg Metro Police officers who were graduated illegally and unlawfully.
Auditor General, highlighting certain things, you talk about operating within the law. The police have confirmed that a criminal case is being investigated against Mayor Geoffrey Makhubo and former Mayor Parks Tau at the Serious Crimes, Commercial Crimes Division. What should citizens of Johannesburg be making of all of this?
Well, the importance is that we should maintain our confidence in our law enforcement authorities. I mean, the former mayor has opened cases every single time that he has felt that there's a need to. And no one has opposed that. And the mayor supports that. If the police are saying that they are investigating, well and good, they must investigate. And that whenever they conclude their investigation, they will obviously come back and say that is there a case to answer to or is there not? The mayor is one person who is a law-abiding citizen of this country. And if indeed there is something that he must respond to, he will respond to it. But from the face of it, and from what we have seen accompanied by the statements by those who have been laying the charges, they are more of a frivolous political ploy than a factual attempt to get justice to be done in cases or areas where seemingly illegality has occurred.
All right, so the mayor welcomes the investigation, I guess, so that it can get cleared up once and for all.
Well, the mayor welcomes any investigation. If someone believes that there's an allegation of corruption or an allegation of fraud or any criminal activity, it is the responsible thing to do to report a case. But what we must not do is to also utilize the police in order to drive political agendas. So that every time we want to make a political statement and we are losing political ground, we make an allegation that the police are investigating. Police investigating is not an affirmation of guilt against a particular individual, but it is an attempt to establish whether or not there are any criminal charges that can be preferred against a person.
All right, so now I've got to tell you, Johannesburg is my city. I've been a resident here now 29 years, so it's my town. I guess you've got the similar feeling in terms of it being your town. How long have you been a citizen here?
Well, I've arrived here since 1998,
wow.
So it's quite a while. I think I've covered over 20 years now within the city of Johannesburg, 23 years plus. So I really take Johannesburg as a home, and so do millions of other South Africans, and many millions of other residents of the city who come from across the world, who appreciate Johannesburg as a home and as a city. It is important for us to serve all those residents of the city, because we do believe that it is a city, and as we aspire to make a world-class African city, that should really be a microcosm of the greater global community that we would wish to see and actually find within the city of Joburg.